Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're tuning in from. I hope you're having a beautiful day and welcome to the Polyhedra Show. So today we have another partnership ecosystem show. This is a really exciting one with Stork. Think about this. Blockchain is only as powerful as the data it can trust and the networks it can connect. Without high-speed, verifiable data feeds, smart contracts break. Without secure, seamless cross-chain movement, blockchain remains fragmented. Today, we have two projects that are solving these problems at the cutting edge. Stork is redefining how data reaches the blockchain, turning oracles into an open, decentralized data marketplace. Polyhedra, of course, is solving blockchain's interoperability problem with zero knowledge proofs, ensuring that blockchains can communicate without trust assumptions. This is very much about removing the middlemen and building systems that don't require trust because they are mathematically sound. So joining me today is, of course, Eric, our CSO and question master, and we have Meredith from Stork. Welcome, Meredith. Really excited for this one, guys. So let's jump straight into it.
Awesome. Happy to be here. GM, everyone. Meredith, thanks for joining us. Excited to have you on the show today.
Very excited to be here. Thanks, guys.
I guess to kick it off, maybe you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself and kind of the origin story of Stork.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Meredith. I'm a founder at Stork. I've been working on the protocol for just coming up on 3 years in May. And just quick context on myself, I've spent the last decade working on data companies. Prior to Stork, most of that time was in Web 2 across identity solutions. I've built a number of marketplaces for marketing use cases, as well as geospatial data. Personal background has been on the product side and go-to-market. And then, I in 2022 took the jump into Web3 or crypto. Had a few of my friends and former colleagues working in the space, and became fascinated with like the very different dynamics that existed in Web3. And Oracle specifically fascinated me in that there was this very clear need for oracles. Every protocol wanted to use one. They didn't want to build their own data infrastructure, but the existing oracles were very rigid and limited in the types of data that they could support, the frequency of updates, the chains that they could connect to and support. And so it just seemed like there was an obvious opportunity to really expand out or open up data access for decentralized protocols. And that really is how Stork came to be.
Awesome. That's a great origin story. And actually, there's a lot of parallels between kind of your path to Web3 and mine. I also previously worked in data, location data at a company called Yext, and then People Data Labs, which you might be familiar with from your time at SafeGraph. So a lot of similarities here. And so, you guys are kind of taking a new approach to, bringing data on chain. Can you talk about, I guess what you saw that was broken with the existing model and, what the feedback that you were hearing from on-chain builders and kind of how you kind of came up with this new model?
Yeah, of course. So, originally in 2022, basically the first opportunity that we saw was the existing oracles in the space were very focused on individual blockchains, and they were built really to support just periodic updates for the major cryptocurrencies or price feeds on the major cryptocurrencies that were less not the most volatile. They were being used for use cases like liquidations on lending markets where there wasn't any leverage, and so things like high performance, super fast updates, supporting a very large data catalog just wasn't a factor in how they were constructed or originally architected. And so we were really excited specifically to start working with PerpDexes because we realized all of these guys were building their data infrastructure in-house and trying to keep it a secret, essentially. Like, it'd be in their docs, but you had to scroll all the way to the bottom, and they would use an Oracle like in a very small, like insignificant way, and that would be at the top. So like basically the problem that we saw there was like folks don't want to create trust assumptions that the builders or the labs behind that protocol are doing right by their users when creating their own data infrastructure. They really want a decentralized solution, but you know, the oracles couldn't keep up and meet their needs. And there was also like this very funny like side anecdote of like you'd go to a PerpDex and you would like look at the markets they had listed, and then you'd look at their oracle that they said they used, and they didn't have data feeds for those markets. So it was just like very obvious if you wanted to dig into it. Okay, so anyways, day one, originally we just set out to basically build an infinite data catalog. And you know, within the world of DeFi, really, that in 2022, that looked like we want to be able to support every cryptocurrency possible. And basically, that was like the proof of concept that we believe for the open data market of like, how do you build a very vast data catalog? How do you support really frequent updates? And how do you make it available on any arbitrary chain that a protocol wants to use it on? And once we were able to really deliver on that, and then had an ecosystem of about 40 protocols already using our data feeds across a handful of different chains, both EVM compatible and Stark compatible, we had high confidence that we could then take the infrastructure that we built for our own Oracle and open that up so that other folks with different types of data could make that available on chain. We didn't want it to be that you have to contact someone at Stork Labs to say, hey, I want this data feed. And then there's this central point of decision making over at Stork Labs where we say yes or no, can you get it? We really wanted to open that up and make this a lot more modular and composable so that we could see a lot more innovation in what can be supported on chain.
Absolutely. And so obviously you guys had this focus on, you know, kind of supporting, I guess, these PerpDex customers early on. Since then, we've seen, you know, tremendous interest in kind of this overlap of blockchain and AI. I'm curious how you've seen maybe, you know, this explosion in AI or decentralized AI, how that's impacted your business, or if you guys are thinking about your product and how it can interact with, you know, AI and AI agents and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think most of the AI agents that we're seeing today on chain specifically are, you know, thinking about how to interact with DeFi protocols. So very great use case for our data feeds. We, you know, across Stork, we have support for most assets listed on centralized exchanges as well as native dexes on different chains. So we've been working on integrations into various different AI agent SDKs so that there's seamless access. You can get seamless access to Stork data feeds. And we also support things other than like price feeds, such as redemption rates for, you know, staked assets. We really can support any arbitrary data point that originates on one chain and make it available for use on another chain, perhaps. So, yeah, we're really excited about funneling our data feeds or the data feeds supported by Stork into AI agents to help them, you know, be able to build more complex systems and action on more information on chain. But another piece that we're thinking about a little bit longer term or further out is, you know, in this world of AI agents operating on our behalf, you really want to make sure that the data feeding into them, that you can have this concept of data provenance where you know where data is originating from, and you can minimize these trust assumptions or really like validate the origination and transformation of that data that's then fed into an agent that is like making decisions based on that data. And so one of the core concepts or features of our marketplace is, you know, everything is cryptographically signed by the data providers themselves. And so agents then can have like different relationships with data providers and make different decisions and have that additional transparency based on the data that's being fed into it.
Yeah, and I think the vision of a kind of a permissionless and verifiable future is something that really is aligned between Polyhedra and Stork, and I think one of the things that makes this partnership so exciting. But when you do open up systems to permissionlessness and you do allow for anybody to contribute data, obviously you have to start to think about how that can impact the developers that are building applications and the end users that may be impacted by inaccurate data in some of these applications. How do you guys balance this permissionlessness with, wanting to protect your users in the event that, there is some anomaly or incorrect data kind of being fed into the system?
Yeah, and this is of course like the dynamic that any marketplace needs to consider. So, there's a bit of curation that we do with the feeds that are curated by Stork ourselves. And one of the things that we have done with the different data providers that feed into the Stork branded price feeds is we make sure that they're all following basically have transparency around how are they calculating the prices that they're submitting, what are the different sources they're pulling from, and then we pass through all the individual inputs from those individual providers as well as an aggregate value. So like as an end consumer, when you're getting the price of BTC USD, you're seeing all the inputs that went into that, and you can actually verify that yourself, that there was no manipulation in the process, or it minimizes the trust assumptions. So what we're trying to do is make sure across the entire marketplace there is that level of transparency that anyone can really evaluate, okay, this is coming from this data provider, but how are they actually, where's like the original source of this? Is it a first party source or is it third party? Where are they curating this from? And then ultimately, as it goes with marketplaces, it's up to the users, right? So they can choose what's right for them based on their own trust assumptions, based on their own tolerance for things like maybe a bit more centralization versus decentralization, speed versus decentralization, frequency of updates, those types of things. But we're building tooling ourselves to help make it easier to, verify the authenticity of where that data originally came from.
Got it. And have you found, this is getting pretty in the weeds, but have you found there's a sweet spot for like, a number of inputs that needs to be present to give you peace of mind? If you were a developer, like what would you look for to evaluate, I guess, a specific data point?
Yeah, it varies data point to data point, unfortunately, right? So, an example here, right? So, we last fall, before the U.S. presidential election, Kalshi, the CFTC regulated prediction market in the U.S., onboarded as a data provider to Stork. And they were making basically, their books available, as well as resolution data to DeFi protocols. And, if you want to, basically the idea there was they have probably more liquidity than a new prediction market, so you can treat them as a source of truth. Okay, so Kalshi is a centralized entity, right? And they have an API where they're reporting out this information. Reality there is you probably don't need 5 different publishers all pulling data from Kalshi, because ultimately the legitimacy of the data from Kalshi is based off of them being a good actor, and you can have as many different publishers pulling that data, it doesn't matter. Another example would be like if an asset is only listed on, just an example, Uniswap, and it's only trading on Uniswap. Okay, bad example, actually. Let's go centralized exchange. Binance, only trading on Binance. You have to trust Binance's API to report the data correctly.
Yep.
So those are instances where, you can have a single reporter. It just matters who that reporter is. And if you can get the data directly from Binance or directly from Kalshi and have a signature attached that it legitimately came from them, that's fantastic. If you have an asset that's trading in a bunch of different places, things like what is the volume on those different venues comes into play. And it's wildly different for every different asset that you look at. So actually, like, one of the hard things that we help with is making sure on an asset based, like every asset has the right number of sources feeding into it.
Got it. That makes sense. And obviously, I think a few years ago, there were differing opinions, but I think everyone now has embraced the fact that, we're going to live in a world with thousands of blockchains, and a lot of applications are going to be omni-chain applications or chain agnostic applications. When you are building something that maybe operates across many different ecosystems, how do you think about kind of where you're getting your data from? I guess if you have the option of kind of you know integrating across a handful of different chains, how do you think about what the best solution for you is when kind of picking the Stork source?
Sure. So, really our mission is to make it so that any data originating from anywhere can be easily accessed on any chain, full stop. So we see ourselves as an omni-chain or chain agnostic solution. We absolutely love our partners, but we do ultimately want to just make on-chain access to data incredibly easy and trustless, or as trustless as possible. So really what that means is most of the data curation is not necessarily taking into account the end chain. Now, the exception to that, and so we have this architecture, I won't get too into the weeds because it's probably not that interesting for everyone, but basically we built this off-chain architecture that entirely relies on cryptographic signatures, Merkle root, as well, to basically make it so everything can be verified even though there is data movement happening off-chain. And then we have tooling that makes it really easy to verify that data, push it on chain, and we have like smart contracts on every chain that we deploy to that is verifying all the information before actually storing it to that contract, at which point it can be used by anyone on chain. The exception to like not taking into consideration chains when at time of sourcing is you may have on a chain, let's say, EXP chain, you could have a native protocol there saying that they want support for a data feed that originates on that chain. And at that point, that's when, sourcing comes into play. We make sure that the connections are built out so that providers in our network are able to pull data from that relevant source or that relevant smart contract or set of smart contracts. But generally, we're just more focused on making everything available everywhere.
Got it. That makes sense. And we are a relatively kind of new, a newer blockchain. We've had our testnet live for a couple of weeks where the ecosystem is really starting to grow. And so I imagine that there are going to be projects that are building, that may have a need for a specific type of data. And let's say that you guys don't currently support it. What's the process for kind of trying to get new data for new use cases into the Stork system?
Yeah. So, I'll transparently right now, it looks like contacting Stork Labs. Eventually we want to, but we then like fan that out to the different providers in the network. So it doesn't come to Stork Labs and we say yay or nay. It's like we share out that message, and we'll create systems to like make that so you don't actually have to manually communicate with us individually at this point. But actually the process for supporting, let's say it's a cryptocurrency, whether it's traded on chain or off chain on sexes or combination, we can get up new feeds within minutes. So oftentimes within requests, new feeds are up within a couple of hours. If it's anticipated, let's say like a new listing is happening, and we can get those up within minutes of the spot markets opening for something like that. If it is something, let's say, a little bit, a little different, example, let's go back to the election. Prior to that, there was this interest in across a few different dexes and offering perps on top of who's going to win the presidential election. And so they needed a way to figure out how do we determine funding rates? How do we determine what the mark price was? And the most liquid source for that was looking at like the Kalshis and the poly markets of the world. And so, we had to, at Stork Labs, we built out the pipes to be able to pull data from those. And that was something that we were able to turn around, within a couple of days. Our team, like the value that we actually see is like our speed around building out new integrations. So it really varies on the specific asset that they're looking at. Right now we're working on expanding out like support for equities. But something that is, I think, unique and pretty cool, and we're excited to see where this goes, is we also have the ability to do things that are totally composable. So I'll give an example. Hope you don't mind me mentioning another chain. But we're working with Helix on Injective, and they designed an AI index, which basically is taking the market cap of a bunch of different top cryptocurrencies in the AI space, as well as equities in the AI space. And it's allowing people to now, trade that new financial product based on just like top AI protocols and corporations. So that was really cool. They got to design, which feeds actually plug into that, what are the different weights. So ultimately, like, we want the whole infrastructure to be very, very composable. But TLDR, unfortunately, you still have to get in touch with Stork Labs, but we promise to help you get what you need very fast
for the time being.
For the time being.
And that was gonna be, you kind of, you already shared kind of one, I think, unique data product or data feed that you guys have created in this AI kind of index. But I was curious, if you could share any, niche, or like what is kind of the most interesting data feed that you guys have been asked to pull together?
Yeah. Most niche. We've definitely gotten a few requests that haven't gone live yet. I'll say that there's some things coming up around sentiment data.
Yeah.
Which is fun, among the more social or real world asset chains. We also are looking at, I think things that are actually in production tend to be like niche, maybe not as exciting or flashy, are these ecosystem assets. So in reality, if Plume, another chain that we're working with, they have a ton of different protocols that are creating products, accepting as collateral native assets on that chain. And they actually just like, historically, they would have to build out these integrations to pull that information themselves. And they've been, we're supporting like probably 20 native assets on Plume right now for that ecosystem, which is, creating more utility, helping create more utility for those assets, because then they can be accepted as collateral across the board. But in terms of fun new use cases that we see on the horizon, I think that there's some fun stuff coming on more of the social side, but haven't yet shipped anything yet.
Yeah. So stay tuned, follow on Twitter, and you'll get some good updates soon. That sounds exciting. And obviously I think this speed to market, or the speed to deployment for you guys, is super powerful, and one of the reasons that you guys are seeing so much success. Can you talk about it on the other side, but not the data feed side, but on the chain deployment side? And what does that process look like? And how do you guys think about, obviously there's probably a ton of demand for you guys to deploy on all these new chains that are coming out. Like, I guess, how quick is it? And how do you think about prioritizing, all of the chains that are coming online?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, our goal is to integrate with every chain everywhere. If any protocol wants to use us on a chain, we will deploy there. So that isn't always the case. Some other oracles, there's a lot of negotiating, there's really high fees. Our main goal is to make data access, open up data access, and so we don't ever want to be the blocker on that front. So what have we done from a product perspective to actually make this super fast? We've built out programmatic deploys for any EVM chain. So really, it's instantaneous. We can be deployed, our BD team will have a conversation with a chain, and then, you know, within minutes we have deployed there. So it's as simple as making an API call, which is really awesome. We've also, though, built out for alt VMs. We have compatibility with SVM, Cosmos, Move, chains, specifically Sui and Aptos. Those yet aren't at a programmatic deploy phase. I guess probably most relevant to SVM, but yeah, we move pretty quickly. And then for any like new VM, it probably takes about 2 weeks of time for us to get deployed there.
Still, you know, much faster than probably some alternatives out there. So really good to hear. Can you talk to us about maybe a little bit longer term, looking into the future, kind of how do you guys see this space evolving, and you know, maybe if you can share kind of, you know, a little bit about the roadmap for Stork. What are you guys focused on for, let's say, the rest of the year?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, additional chains, very big part of our roadmap. In Q4 was actually like our goal last year to get us ready to integrate with from a product perspective with as many chains as possible. So so that's one piece. We're also working on that time to add new assets, shaving it down as much as possible. So we started the year where it would take us about an hour probably to get new assets live across the network. As I mentioned, with some notice, we can do it within 7 minutes of spot markets opening. We're really thinking about like cutting off seconds and minutes at this point. So a decent amount of work is going into that. We're also working on some tooling to actually allow protocols to be able to like add support for a new feed themselves without having to interact with anyone and have it go through our system, which will be pretty cool. And then most recently, we've been a little bit quiet about this, but I guess I'll talk about it now. We released a verifier. So right now, what it looks like is it's a Google Chrome extension, and basically, historically, I talked about how everything is cryptographically signed, and you can verify it yourself. What that has looked like in practice is Stork's verifying those data inputs. The protocols using the data themselves are verifying it. But really the trust assumption lies with both of us that we're all doing that work. And so we're opening up access who can actually verify messages and potentially spot anything that has been, you know, fails that test of verification, where, you know, this would flag something like a data provider has been hacked, right? And now someone's trying to impersonate them, which is really key to make sure that we're never in that situation. So that has been a fun thing. It's in alpha stage right now. It's growing faster than we could have ever anticipated. So that is building upon that. And then I would say like the most interesting or some of the really exciting stuff that I'm looking forward to in the second half of this year is we are very much taking, you know, DeFi is the main use case for oracles today, but we don't believe that will be the only use case as we see more development on chain. And so we're thinking about how can you bring on entirely new types of data feeds that aren't just used for DeFi use cases, even data that starts with or originates with individual users, and what does it look like to turn an individual into a data provider or make data available that could be verified on chain. So we're still early in the development phase of that. We had a hack week last week where we did some or 2 weeks ago where the team did some cool proof of concepts around it. But yeah, that's kind of some of the stuff that we're going to be tackling in the second half of the year.
You just inspired me. But you know, we have a lot of discussions around data privacy, and obviously as a kind of a zero knowledge company, and specifically with our focus on ZKML, we think about these use cases where the input data may need to remain private. Have you guys thought about, and it sounds like with this kind of, you know, I don't know how to frame it, but like consumer, let's say data verifier, you're maybe moving in this direction. Have you guys thought about how you might be able to enable, you know, data sets that are built off of private data and aggregated into feeds and things like that?
Yeah. So we are thinking about this, and you know, something I think that a lot of people have started to hear about. It's still very early. Well, early in terms of it being discussed now. Not that it's entirely new technology, but one of the things we've been looking at is zk-TLS as a tool to enable individuals to share private data without revealing all of the details to prove that they potentially satisfy some conditions. We're also looking at other ways for individuals to actually permission out their data on an ongoing basis. So yeah, we're still at the phase of figuring out the real use cases for getting that data aggregated. But it's a lot of fun because all of the folks that are kind of building in this space to leverage this are still very early, but it's really exciting to see the different ideas that people are coming up with of how they could leverage this data.
Awesome. Well, this was great. I'm going to bring Anthony back up because I know probably the chat's going crazy, and we'll probably get some questions from the community to wrap us up.
Yeah. Hey guys, that was very, very cool. It's from the outset, knowing that you're both kind of data specialist background, I was like, here we go. It's going to be a nerd out, and I think that it was actually very, very cool. And in terms of the amount of community questions we have had, again, over 800. You guys, I think you went above and beyond, like with the amount of knowledge that you have. Interestingly enough, though, like that some of our community are obviously huge Stork fans because, I know that you said you didn't want to get into the weeds with this stuff, Meredith, but I think they want to get in there with you. I know that, I know that you mentioned the Verify browser extension. So this question, the Stork Verify browser extension allows users to validate Oracle data. How does this tool enhance community engagement and contribute to the overall security and accuracy of the data feeds?
Yeah, well, that's awesome to hear. I've gotten some feedback that sometimes I get too much into the weeds, so I'm trying to zoom out a little bit. But if you push me, I'll go there. Yeah, okay. So the Chrome extension, I'll be honest, I don't know if the team wants me talking about this, but we're here. So the Chrome extension, okay, so from a community perspective, one of the reasons I'm super excited about this is because I actually think Oracle's more than anything else have been totally abstracted away from the end users, but are so integral to the products that they are using on chain, right? So if there's an issue with an Oracle, that is going to totally can totally mess up your experience on chain. It can put you in a really bad position. You can lose a ton of money. But on a day when things work, you never have to think about the Oracle. I think I've gotten feedback explicitly around I only think about Oracles when there's a failure. And that's fine. It probably is the way it should be. But one of the opportunities that we're really excited about is taking all of the pieces of an Oracle, really, then figuring out what can individuals participate in? How can they play a role? What does a people-powered Oracle look like? And so this is our first step in that direction, where we're enabling our community to actually play a role in securing the Oracle itself. So as I mentioned, especially when it comes to an open data market, one of the most critical features of this is you need to verify the data provenance of individual data points. You need to make sure these publishers, who I've now see as a reliable data provider, I need to make sure that this data is consistently coming from them. Other Oracles will tell you a lot of things around, we do all of these X, Y, and Z to make sure that no data provider ever gets hacked. It's you don't have to trust that anymore. You can actually just verify it yourself. And then if there is an issue, the individuals are able to raise that, sound the alarm and potentially get those publishers shut down. So that's one of the reasons that we decided, or one of the big reasons why we decided to launch this. Very much still in an alpha phase. It's only been out for a few weeks. But yeah, that was really the motivation behind it.
And I can hear our community clamoring and thinking, how do you guys incentivize these independent data verifiers to participate, or is it just for love of Stork?
So today it is love of Stork.
Yeah.
Really, it is something. So part of the reason we haven't talked about it is like you look at Stork's blog, there's nothing on there about it. We haven't talked about this publicly. We just announced it to our Discord. We said, this is something we're building. This is in the alpha stage. We'd love for you to test it out. So that's been the release so far. Based on that crazy amount of downloads that we've seen, I think if you look at the Google Chrome store, it will tell you that we're past 200,000 downloads of the Chrome extension. So yeah, today love of the game, but we'll keep you posted.
I hope that you guys are ready for, thousands of more downloads. They're probably all heading over to the Google Chrome store now.
Yeah, you've definitely got a couple of thousand, I think. Yeah. Very, very cool. I love these sessions so much because it's also like such a learning experience for me. And I know that our community appreciates it as well. These like, very high level conversations, but then getting to get so granular with it. So yeah, just appreciate that. There are like one or two other questions here, apart from the, obviously having to sift through this many questions is a full-time job in and of itself. But a couple more that like jump out at me that is I don't fully understand. So it's a great opportunity for me too. So this one is talking about temporal numeric values.
Someone looked at our smart contract. That's wild. Okay.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, we've got some cross community here for sure.
Okay.
Asking about, so how does this abstraction enhance the flexibility and applicability of oracles across diverse data types?
Yeah. So temporal numeric value. So if you're DeFi, if you're a protocol on chain, when you're querying Stork's contract to get the value, that is the field that you are calling. Instead of price, it's temporal numeric value. And so the reason we made that choice is it was very intentional that we are not being prescriptive. This is not an oracle that only supports price feeds. This is a data market that can support any arbitrary data asset that all of our partners right now are DeFi, but any builder, not just DeFi, any protocol needs, right? So that is, just an expression of, the ultimate goal that we're trying to enable. And yeah.
Very, very cool. I think that pretty much covers it, guys. Like I did put down here, I did sift through and pull out 80 questions, but like honestly, I'm like, I was through that whole show, I was going through and I'm like, man, like do it. Like you guys are hitting every one of them. I did think,
whoever submitted that question about temporal numeric value, send me a DM on Twitter. We got to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think they obviously, I'd say like, go like, where can they find you? But I'm sure that they're already very well aware. Obviously, guys, as well, like we are coming up to 45 minutes, but where can everybody find you? If where can people get more information, Meredith?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter is at Meredith Pitkoff, which is probably not the most intuitive thing to spell. Happy to write it down, but you can see it in the Twitter post. I'm tagged. And then at some point I might have to stop doing this, but you can also reach out to me directly at my email. It's meredith@stork.network.
Very, very cool. And the sentiment data that you mentioned sounds very, very interesting. And obviously the zkTLS, super cool. So everybody keep an eye out for that. But in terms of community questions, guys, I think you guys have hit the nail on the head with this show. I'm sure everyone's super excited. We have a few thousand people tuned in right now, and I can already see the community has gained a lot from this one and loved it a lot. So a lot of appreciation for you guys, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks, Meredith.
Awesome. Thanks to Tom. This was fun.
Yeah, awesome. We'll have to do it again.
Cool. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks,
see you guys. Bye.